Hello everyone, my name is Jayant and welcome to the channel. Welcome to the live stream. आज हम पहली बार एक live stream करने जा रहे हैं. So looking forward to the experience. I hope that everyone enjoys and finds something good to take away from here. Yeah. So the today's discussion is basically about whatever I've been able to learn over the course of last 7 days, talking to a lot of people from the restaurant industry or people who have helped people in the restaurant industry raise funds or people who work in the aggregator side of things, that is Zomato and Swiggy particularly, right? So the intent is to go through all of that and try to understand about how is the dynamics, how do they decide what the commission rates are supposed to be for each of the restaurant, and how do basically the margins look like, what defines whether a particular restaurant or a particular outlet is going to make money or not when they are engaging with Zomato Swiggy, and if yes, then why, and if not, then why are they not going to make money and still they want to be a part of Zomato and Swiggy? So let us understand all of that right away. Chalo. So first of all, we will start off trying to understand what all kind of restaurants are there when it comes to the perspective of Zomato or Swiggy, right? So when we look at that, we can basically bifurcate the restaurant classes into two different categories. That is the national brand or the non-national brands, right? And then there is a third category, that is cloud kitchens, which we'll deal with separately, right? So first of all, what we have is what are national brands and what are non-national brands. When we talk of national brands, we have two categories again, that is large and big national brands and the small ones. The large ones are basically the likes of Domino's, McDonald's, um, KFC, or probably say Burger King, right? We have heard of those names, Pizza Hut, right? And when we talk of smaller national brands, we talk of something like say Biryani by Kilo or probably La Pino's Pizza. These are smaller national brands emerging very fast. Chayos, for example, right? These have a national presence. They are present in most of the major cities out there, and they're growing very fast, but they're still to be something like a Domino's, right? Growing right now. And then basically, when we talk of the category wherein we have non-national brands, we again have two categories. One is the legacy superheroes, right? These are basically regional players who are very famous for what they have built over the course of last 50 years, 60 years, something like that. So, for example, if you go to Bahadurgarh, you will find this thing called basically Billu ke Pakode. So Billu ke Pakode is a joint where basically not a single pakoda of the day goes unsold. It is so popular out there that it doesn't need Zomato or Swiggy, and it has just one outlet and it's always sold out. There is a massive rush out there. You would have seen such outlets in most of your cities, right? There would be such popular joints out there. Similarly, basically, when you think about it, there is Brahmin's Cafe in Bangalore. So there is a massive line out there to get into that cafe and get a filter coffee, right? So those are your regional legacy superheroes, right? And then you have got smaller players who are local players just running a restaurant for the sake of it, just a business. They just want to earn a living out of it. And there are no such ambitions as to build a legacy business or something that can be scaled to a big level. They are doing it because they need to run a house, they need some business of their own, and they have built a restaurant for that case, restaurant or a hotel, right? So these are the broad categories that we have got. And based on these categories, we will now try to understand how do the dynamics basically work. So when we talk of the non-brand legacy places, right, these two kind of things. So what we find that these are generally sourcing most of their orders from their own outlets. They are not as dependent on Zomato or Swiggy. As I told you, Billu ke Pakode or this thing in Brahmin's Cafe in Bengaluru, they don't need Zomato Swiggy as much. So maybe they source 5-10% of their overall orders from Zomato and Swiggy. And most of the sales actually happen in-house from their own stores. And even when we talk of the other local players who are not as big, but your ordinary mom and pop restaurants or cafes and all, they are basically, you can say, mostly about their own orders. That is 70% is in-house, 30% is what basically comes from Zomato, Swiggy, and those guys. And they are there to basically generate some extra sales. Yeah, margins are lower on Zomato and Swiggy because you have to pay for deliveries, a bit of discounts, and also commissions, etc. But margins are lower, but because those extra orders contribute some bit, it helps you earn a little extra, and at times to just cover for your fixed expenditures, fixed costs. So that is a big benefit for them all, right? And when we talk about these uh, branded side ones, right? The branded players. So the likes of Domino's and all, the big category plays a very different game, and the non-big category, that is the players like say Chayos or Biryani by Kilo, they are into a different game. So the big category is out there not to build a brand recall or a brand identity, because that is already something that has been built. So they are out there to basically outcrowd the market. Basically, what they basically saw is that if they're not going to be on Zomato or Swiggy, where there are a lot of users coming to order food, people are going to discover about a lot of local champions, local competitors who can deliver better, and their competitors will be born in every city, and that will be a long-term negative for players like uh, McDonald's, KFC, Burger King, or something like a Domino's or Pizza Hut. So that is the reason why they exist on such platforms. That okay, if you are going to be here, then whenever someone searches for a pizza, whenever they check out La Pino's Pizza, they will also see a Domino's out there. And because Domino's enjoys a larger and a stronger recall, and that helps Domino's ensure that okay, La Pino's is going to get fewer orders from Zomato Swiggy. They are into that kind of a play. And when we talk about the other players out there, which is say smaller brands like La Pino's and Biryani by Kilo, etc., these are there for discovery sake, because they know that we are decently big but not as big. There is a large population out there which still doesn't know about us, and what they want to do with all these platforms is that they want more and more people to order from them at least once, because then there will be some recall. Next time they order, there will be better recall, and that way whenever they'll be going out, when they spot that okay, there is La Pino's Pizza ka store out there, or a store of say for example Biryani by Kilo, there will be a reason for them to check that out, to go there in there and dine in and order there, or probably check out their own app, download the app for say Biryani by Kilo and begin to order directly. That is the game that they are trying to play. So when we talk about both of these players, they are not really making big money out here. These guys are here for discovery sake or to kill the competition, and either ways they are basically paying the platform. How? So basically when we talk of the bigger names like Domino's or Pizza Hut, these guys basically are doing a favor to the platform. If we look at from their perspective, they are doing a favor to Zomato Swiggy, that okay, we are letting you give us orders, and for that we are still paying you 5 to 8% of the commissions, and we are going to pay you nothing else. We'll take care of our delivery ourselves. That is what Domino's does. So when you order a Domino's pizza from a platform like Zomato or Swiggy, you will see that delivery will be done by Domino's guy himself, not a Zomato or Swiggy delivery person. So that is the game that they are playing, and they will still be paying some money to these platforms for the discovery sake. They don't need the discovery, but why do you do that? Because there are limited discovery slots. If you search for a pizza, there are only certain names that can come at the top, and they just don't want that someone else can outbid that, pay Zomato and Swiggy, and come above them. So they don't want they Domino's doesn't want that La Pino should show above it on the Domino's app. So that is the reason why it also pays Domino's or Swiggy for that particular real estate on the app. And that is how these guys also pay to these platforms not just the commissions but also an added fee for discovery, which is basically not meant for their own discovery but to ensure that other regional competitors or smaller brands do not find space to promote themselves out there, right? So that is how these guys basically engage with these platforms. And when we talk of Lapinos and these guys, they also pay for discovery to ensure that okay, if not the top slot, then maybe the second top slot or the one below that will be ours. So there is still going to be some bit of visibility for us. So that is what they pay for discovery, and other than that what they pay is commissions. And because they are not as powerful as Domino's, and because they do not bring in as big number of volumes in terms of orders, they tend to pay a little extra commission than compared to what Domino's pays. So if Domino's Pizza Hut probably pay something in the range of 5 to 8%, something like a Biryani by Kilo will probably be paying something around 15% or something like that. Compared to a local regional player, like I mentioned before, your regional players, your mom and pop cafes and restaurants, they would probably be paying much, much extra, something into the tune of 22%, 24%, 28%. So if you compare this entire picture, what you learn is that the category of commission, the brackets of commission basically go from something as low as 5 to 8% for big, powerful brands to something as high as 28 to 25% for the other players who are still very small, or regional players who are just there to run a business of their own, trying to earn some bit extra for their pockets, right? Those are the two big extremes, and in between that, there are these smaller brands which are trying to make a name for themselves, like Biryani by Kilo, Chayos, etc. That is the broad spectrum, along with along which we can place all the players out there which are engaging with Zomato, Swiggy, and these kind of aggregators. So that is the broader picture. But okay, now that we have covered that, uh, we basically discussed one thing, that when it comes to regional players, the legacy players, all these smaller players, they generally see much of their orders coming in from their own outlets and not from these aggregators. So basically 70-80% of their orders are coming from their own outlets, 20%, 10% are coming from something like Zomato, Swiggy. But what about the bigger players? So when we talk of something like Domino's, Zomato or Swiggy probably accounts for just about 5% or something like that. Rest is all basically their own in-store sales or their own app and website. Okay? So clearly, Zomato or Swiggy is not really adding much of the value for Zomato, for Domino's or Pizza Hut, in terms of, okay, they're generating a lot more sales out of it. It's clearly about what we just talked about. That is not giving the competitor the space to grow bigger via Zomato or Swiggy. So they are playing that game, and for that they are paying them well in terms of commissions that are low, but also discovery fee, which is a bit significant, right? So that is pretty clear that, okay, much of the orders for these guys are basically generated from their own outlets. Now when we come to the second order of players, that is players like Biryani by Kilo, Chayos, etc., these guys actually generate much larger amount of orders from Zomato or Swiggy. So basically something to the tune of 60, 70, 50% of their overall orders actually come from Zomato or Swiggy itself, and they don't earn money on these orders in general. Mostly they end up losing money. These are negative margin orders, and they do it because they need much stronger brand recall. They're still trying to attract a lot of people to order from them, to get to know about Chayos, to get to know about Biryani by Kilo, because pan India the market is still largely untapped, and there is a big headroom. And the only way to easily get to these guys is through Zomato or Swiggy, which have already brought all those audiences to their platform. And that is the broader picture. Okay, we have gotten that. But when we are done talking all of these, there are also a few exceptions that few bigger players are able to extract out of all these equations. So when we talk about, say, big players like Domino's or even Rebel Foods, which is India's largest cloud kitchen operator, right? Cloud kitchen cluster of brands, house of brands operator. So these guys basically are naturally able to bring down the commissions. That is one. But other than that, they also say that, okay, for select brands or select products, we are going to do delivery ourselves. So Domino's does its own delivery. Similarly, when it comes to Rebel Foods, it has its own pizza brand called Oven Story. And for Oven Story, for a long time, Swiggy and Zomato were doing the delivery part. But now these guys do the delivery themselves. They've cracked that relationship, that, okay, you guys take care of the order generation, lead generation for us, discovery. But when it comes to delivery, we'll take care of it on our own end. So the equations are gradually changing. When it comes to larger, bigger brands, they are trying to ensure that, okay, more and more parts of the pie can be owned by them. As more and more order volumes are coming, they find that, okay, it is still affordable to build a small fleet of our own who can go and deliver things out there. And that is the reason why gradually, as their order inflows have begun to increase, they are they basically have built the power to say to Zomato or Swiggy that, okay, you know what, delivery is something we'll take care of, so we'll not be paying you for that. And because the order volumes are huge, Zomato and Swiggy at times have to oblige. So that is how that particular part of the game is working. Now we have basically understood what are the different kind of brands and how do they engage with these properties, that is Zomato or Swiggy and these kind of platforms, and what are the other equations out there. That is something that we have understood. But then a key question should arise that, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically, another dynamic of the relationship basically comes out, which is about how are the pricing basically decided, right? Because we generally often see people complaining that, okay, when it comes to Zomato or Swiggy, a lot of restaurants have separate menus out there. So their original menu would probably sell a burger for rupees 200, but Zomato or Swiggy probably lists the same product at 250. And we generally think that, okay, the restaurant is doing it because they basically want that, okay, we are paying them a lot of money for commissions and all, so let us try to inflate the product itself. But what I basically learned from talking to so many people is that quite often Zomato or Swiggy and their key account managers often push the restaurant owners to actually push up the product price. Why? Two reasons out there. Number one, so it's basically gamification of the user. What happens is, say a burger is priced rupees 220 by the restaurant, but at 199 and above, Zomato or Swiggy probably have to do a free delivery. So what they will do is, they will ask the restaurant partner to price the burger on their platform at 195, so that just to ensure that free delivery, you will probably order something more and take the overall order value to 320 or something like that. This happens quite often based on what I've been able to learn. And this is meant to gamify the entire system to get the end user to order something extra, not just one product, but more than that, to ensure that the free delivery thing can be much more better used to basically ensure a higher order value, right? That is one part. And the other reason why we often see a disparity between the original menu price and the Zomato Swiggy wala price is that these restaurants are often pushed by the key account managers of Zomato Swiggy to basically inflate the prices, because that way they get to ensure a higher gross order value, which can be reported to the investors as well as shareholders of the in the listed case, which is in the case of Zomato. Now, this is not an accusation because I cannot prove it, but this is based on what I've been able to learn from people in the industry. Now, what did I basically learn is that a lot of time these guys try to tell them that okay, instead of 220 rupees, why not price the burger on our platform at rupees 260? Because if you do that, in terms of percentages, there is a big jump in the gross order value, number one. And in return, uh, whatever extra discount has to be given, the Zomato or Swiggy part are ready to do that. So basically, they tell them that inflate the price, we will help you subsidize the same and ensure that the end user gets the product at the same price by issuing a discount out there. And that discount will go into the books of Zomato or Swiggy. So they show it as a promotional and marketing expenditure, those kind of things. Meanwhile, the end burger reaches the consumer at the same price, and the bill generated is just a higher value that basically gets counted as a higher gross order value. And when you do it at a big scale with large restaurant partners, it shows up in your reported numbers of gross order value. So, for example, say if Zomato is showing that okay, our gross order value is 2,000 crores, by ensuring that okay, if the big partners can probably sell something worth something like rupees 220 at 260, this 2,000 crores can probably go to something like 2,400 crores, and that is a big jump to report to shareholders or investors in other way, right? So that is something which is pretty rampant and it happens a lot out there. So this is all that I learned about the broader industry, right? But then there is another segment of this entire industry called cloud kitchens, right? Which is pretty hot out there. A lot of people want to get in there. And we often see that a lot of our regional players, we often find that there are a lot of people in our circles who are starting a cloud kitchen of their own to cater to regional local demand out there, right? So how does that part really work when it comes to Zomato or Swiggy? So the problem is, when it comes to cloud kitchens, we people generally think that the margins are much lower and it's much easier to operate, because you will not be sorry, margins are higher, it's much easier to operate because you don't have to pay as much for high or premium real estate, you don't have to employ as many people out there, and also you do not have to invest in as big infra in terms of say air conditioned proper cafes out there, or proper seating area, etc. All that real estate, you don't have to pay those, right? So often we assume that it's a higher margin business, but the problem is, they do not have that much visibility and the brand is so much difficult to build, and thus they do not get as many orders out there, so they have to actually spend all that much and probably even more to build the brand or to get the people to know about them. And that is the reason why when it comes to Zomato or Swiggy, when they depend entirely on these kind of platforms, these cloud kitchen only operators often end up spending a lot on the discovery part, so they have to pay a significant sum as advertising income or to the platforms like Zomato or Swiggy. So they pay a significant sum out there, right? So that is one part. And despite that, often the unit economics do not make sense because, as I said, say you are a cloud kitchen which basically makes pizzas out there, right? And the prime real estate on Zomato or Swiggy has already been bought out by someone like Domino's or La Pinos, these major players who have the money to do that. So you cannot even get to the top slots, and that's why you do not get most of the orders that basically come to these platforms. And because you cannot get those orders, your unit economics do not make much sense over the longer term. So you have to make investments for that entire cloud kitchen. You have to pay rental, even if it's not as high as the premium real estate, you have to pay for that. And you have to ensure a particular size of cooks and team, all those workers. And if you don't get enough orders out there, it's game over. And that is a big problem that a lot of these players face, because of which most of the players who try to play this game at scale often end up totally into losses and selling themselves out to other players. That is one. Now, there are only two segments which are actually making money in the cloud kitchen segment. These are what? Well, either it is some local player that, okay, you know, some local auntie who is a great chef. She already had a market in the local two, three societies. So she basically has built a small cloud kitchen out of a room or something like that. And she's operating that beautifully. That is working out pretty fine. And she also basically, she already has a captive demand in the local two, three societies out there. And beyond that, she also has Zomato Swiggy, which brings in some extra volumes. So that is one business that is working out, which is a small case setup. And then there is the big names like Rebel or Cure Foods. Now, what do these guys do? They have large cloud kitchens using which, and they also have invested heavily into brand building. So there is a recall already established. They've already been spending a lot on that. And via which they generate a lot of demand, a lot of orders coming from Swiggy, Zomato, and their own platforms, and things are sorted at that end. But beyond that, to make sure that there is a larger effort towards brand building and to ensure better unit economics, they also have begun to open their own stores, their own outlets out there. So they are no longer purely cloud kitchens, but rather cloud plus physical. They have that presence out there. So you would see that, okay, Cure Foods has is operating a food court somewhere, entire food court, where where it basically has its multiple brands as separate kiosk out there, and that generates recall for each of its sub brands and broadly for Cure Foods as well. And that helps ensure that, okay, the growth and the brand building can be much more sustainable, and it won't be limited to just one additional order from the Zomato or Swiggy discovery part. So that is one thing. The other thing is that these guys also basically are doing it to ensure that once the recall is built, most likely someone like Jayant, who is well educated, is now aware of the brand and is an internet savvy user, should ideally probably search for their name on the internet and probably see that, okay, they have their own website or app from which I can order at a much discounted value. So that is the game what those guys are trying to play. So they are not here to basically ensure that we earn more income out of it. Yes, revenues do come, but these guys operate on Zomato or Swiggy mostly at negative margins to ensure that basically it's an advertising effort. You build a brand out there, and that helps you generate a longer term benefit if a user comes back to their outlet or their own website or platform on its own. Once that is done, there is no going back. So that is all that we have learned so far about the entire game. And apart from that, basically we have got some comments out there. Let us try to address that. So Sushant has basically mentioned that it's India versus South Africa. I'm really sorry, boss. Uh, the video is going to be there on the YouTube channel for much longer than that. It's going to be there. You can watch it some other time. It's totally about that, yeah. And then we have got Damanjeet Singh mentioning that what will it take for ONDC to take on Zomato or Swiggy? It's been a tech demonstrator so far. So based on what I learned talking to all these people is that uh, so ONDC is an all new channel for these guys, where basically you don't have to pay as much commissions and there is no such discovery fee. Either people once people know that, okay, they can order via ONDC and get it delivered, it's sorted. So ONDC is more about low on convenience but low on cost. Two things. So for the consumer, it's lower on the convenience side of things, but for the restaurant operator, it is basically lower on the cost side of things. So there is a mutual beneficial area that if the consumer begins to see that, okay, I'm okay with lower convenience, but once I'm assured that, okay, it is built up to such a stage that I'm going to get my order delivered within 45 minutes to 1 hour, that is where the biggest part is going to happen. That, okay, the adoption is going to kick in. Right now, we are still to get there in most of the areas of India where ONDC is already functioning. So what we need is that as Shadowfax and all these delivery partners scale up things beautifully to get to a point that they can basically process any kind of deliveries within a span of maybe 45 minutes, 1 hour. Once that happens, adoption is going to really kick in. And when that happens, the consumers will benefit from lower prices and the restaurants will benefit from lower commission and discovery fees. And that is the reason why the thesis sounds very strong, because of which a lot of these big restaurant partners are really bullish on this entire theme. But even when it happens, there will definitely be a sizable number of people who will basically say that, okay, convenience really matters much more, and I trust Zomato or Swiggy for that. If I'm a gold member, for example, and the order is delivered late to me, Zomato is going to issue a coupon to me, but the restaurant or the ONDC partner is not going to do that for me, right? So based on what I've been able to learn from all these people in the industry, they're pretty bullish on ONDC in the mid to long term, not in the near term. But as that happens, will it become a threat for Zomato or Swiggy? Uh, there are two ways to look at that. Number one, is it going to eliminate Swiggy or Zomato? The answer is absolute no. But is it going to take away the growth? Is it going to slow down the growth part for Swiggy or Zomato? The answer is yes, because as adoption kicks in, it will be much favorable for a lot of people to order from ONDC. That is the learnings that we have gotten so far. So that is all what I've got. I guess I'll wait for another 10 to 15 seconds to see that if there are any comments that we need to address. Otherwise, we can close this out. Yeah. I hope that you guys would have enjoyed this entire session, who all the people who basically have been watching it so far. And if you found it beneficial, do share that in the comments and do subscribe to the channel. Yeah. Cool. I think that we don't have any more questions coming in. So those are all the learnings. Take care. Happy Sunday and happy India versus South Africa match. Enjoy the cricket. Bye.